Hello, everyone. This is J.M. Benjamin, author of Down in the Dirty, My Mans and Them, Ride or Die Chick 1, 2, and 3, On the Run with Love, Heaven and Earth, Memoirs of an Accidental Hustler, as well as From Incarceration to Incorporation, a nonfiction motivational book. Today, I've decided to take you back to where it all began with my freshman novel, Down in the Dirty. What I decided was to read you guys the first 4 chapters of my freshman novel, Down in the Dirty, which takes place in North Carolina. So, with that being said, I will read you the synopsis just in case you guys are new readers. For you seasoned vets that have been following me since Down in the Dirty, enjoy the read. Childhood friends, Keisha, Desiree, Tasha, and Pam, quickly learn how to use their beauty and sexual prowess to manipulate men. Each woman has suffered abuse at the hands of a man, and they decide to make a lifelong pact to get revenge on all ballers. These gorgeous but scandalous women turn the tables by making men who cross their path, especially if they're not from the dirty, pay for their womanizing behavior. After pulling several heists and getting away with murder, these ruthless and cold-hearted women will stop at nothing to get what they want until one of them begins to fall for their prey. I introduce you to my freshman novel, Down in the Dirty. The prologue. Keisha, come on, Desiree nervously yelled to her friend as she stuck her head out of New York's motel room door to check to see if the coast was clear. She hoped that no one had heard the commotion that had just taken place and would come out of their rooms. Everything happened so fast for Desiree that she hadn't had time to really stop and think about what she and her friend Keisha had agreed to do. But it was too late to turn back. The damage was already done, so she would have to live with the consequences. When she first told Keisha what New York had done to her, Desiree had no idea that it would trigger Desiree's own past and cause Keisha to react the way she had. She and Keisha had cried nonstop as they shared their stories, reliving the horrors of their ordeals. But as the tears began to dry up and their feelings began to transform from pain and shame into anger and wanting to seek revenge, Keisha proposed they go and confront New York. At first, Desiree was against the idea for fear of what could happen, but Keisha assured her the two of them possessing baseball bats would be a match for New York. Hearing how confident her friend was put Desiree somewhat at ease, but at the same time, she was still scared. It wasn't until Keisha had actually gone and retrieved the 2 brand new aluminum bats that had been left in her mother's living room closet by one of her mother's many lovers that Desiree felt up for the confrontation. She didn't know what to expect once they got to the motel, but Keisha's pep talk had her intrigued enough to want to see things through. Just as Desiree finished changing into one of Keisha's outfits, Keisha came back into the room holding a set of keys to her mother's burgundy 1979 Monte Carlo. Taking her mother's car was not out of the ordinary for Keisha. She had always stolen, or let her tell it, borrowed her mother's car whenever her mother had male company at the house. Her mother drank and got high so much that she had never noticed that the keys or the car were missing. As they had driven to Motel 6 where New York was staying, adrenaline was pumping a mile a minute through Desiree's entire body as Keisha ran down the plan to her again, making sure that she was clear on things. While Desiree was a nervous wreck, Keisha was as cool as an ocean breeze. When they had arrived at the motel, Keisha had pulled into the back and parked like she had already had a room there. They had exited the Monte Carlo and entered the motel through the back door. They hiked up the 2 flights of stairs to the 2nd floor where New York's room was located. As planned, once they had reached the floor, Keisha had waited at the end of the hall with the two bats as Desiree had cautiously gone and knocked on New York's room door. Desiree was just about to walk away from the door, disappointed that New York hadn't answered, when she heard his voice coming from the other side. "What you doing here?" "I just wanted to talk to you." "I know about what?" He cut her off. "I know you didn't mean what happened earlier," Desiree had managed to say, just as she and Keisha had rehearsed. "Who you with?" he had asked with skepticism. "Nobody. I'm by myself," Desiree replied, hoping he believed her. New York opened the door. Desiree could see he was semi-erect through his boxers. She had tried her hardest to hide her look of disgust and flashed him a painful smile. New York had stuck his head out into the hallway, looking left, then right, to confirm that Desiree was actually alone. Convinced, he let her in and walked back to the bed. Desiree closed the door behind her. "So what you want to talk to me about?" New York had asked her, rubbing his crotch. "New York, I thought you cared about me. Why you do me like that?" Desiree had questioned as she fought back the tears. She and Keisha had discussed what she should say, and Desiree thought she could handle being in front of him again. But now being face to face with New York released all the pain she had endured from him earlier. "Bitch, that's what you wanted to talk to me about? Get your little dumb ass out of here That was as far as he'd gotten before Keisha had burst through the unlocked door holding the two bats. Before New York could really react, Keisha had closed the door and handed one of the bats to Desiree. "The fuck you country-ass bras think you doing?" he had asked, laughing aloud. To answer his question, Keisha rolled up on him and swung the bat. "Oh shit," New York yelled, throwing up his hands to protect himself, as Keisha had tried to knock his head clean off his shoulders. She had connected with New York's forearm, and he fell to the floor. "You broke my fucking arm," New York spat, looking at Keisha. Keisha caught him again, once in the stomach and once in his left kneecap. Desiree had stood there in shock as New York spit blood. She had never seen Keisha so out of control. "Nigga, shut the fuck up. You want to take pussy without permission, huh, motherfucker?" Keisha asked. She'd hit New York over and over, trying to knock his head clean off, while New York screamed in agony. "Des, get something to stuff in his mouth before somebody hears him," Keisha commanded. Desiree found one of New York's socks and stuffed it in his mouth while their eyes met. She didn't feel pity for him because he had violated her, and now he had to pay. "Des, bust this motherfucker in his head," Keisha had barked. Desiree had just stood there watching New York squirm in pain. "Des, you hear me? Bust this nigga shit," Keisha had repeated, but still Desiree stood there in a daze. It wasn't until blood spattered across her face that she had snapped out of the trance. Keisha had done what she had told Desiree to do. "Where this nigga shit at?" Keisha asked herself as she began searching the room. "Keisha, let's just go," Desiree had said as she used her shirt to wipe New York's blood off her face. "Fuck that. Wait a minute. This nigga need to know he can't just fuck with a chick in the dirty and think he gonna call. Just wait for me at the door. I'm coming. This nigga got me pissed off." "Okay, but hurry up." Desiree was anxious to get out of the room. Desiree had headed toward the door. As she began to walk away from New York's body, she was stopped in her tracks. She felt the resistance on her leg, and without having to look down, she knew what was immobilizing her. New York had grabbed her by the ankle as tight as he could. More afraid than anything, Desiree had turned around and began beating New York's helpless body with her bat. With each swing, images of what New York had done to her played inside Desiree's mind. Tears streamed down her face, and without realizing it, she had slipped into a blind rage. Keisha had to call her girl's name 6 times before she had ceased her attack on New York's lifeless body. It didn't take a medical examiner to determine that it was over for New York. Keisha had counted at least 15 times that Desiree had hit him directly in the head with the baseball bat. Once Desiree had come back to her senses and realized what she had done, the pit of her stomach began to boil, and she had run to the bathroom to vomit. She had reached the toilet just in time. Seeing New York's bashed-in face had sickened her. She could not believe she had beat him beyond recognition, but she was not in her right state of mind, so she really didn't know what to believe. She had reached for a towel and wet it, then wiped her face. When she looked, the towel was soaked with blood. New York's blood. She wasn't sure whether it was out of fear or out of habit, but Desiree began wiping down the bathroom area, making sure nothing could be traced back to her and Keisha. She headed back to New York's body. Still somewhat discombobulated, Desiree had looked around as Keisha continued her search. As she scanned the room, Desiree's gaze had zeroed in on the black-handled 007 blade that laid on top of his nightstand. New York usually used it to split his Dutch masters. Judging by the smell of him when she entered the room, Desiree was sure New York hadn't taken a shower after he had raped her earlier that day. She knew her pubic hairs and fluids were mixed with his, and she knew enough about DNA to know this incident could be linked to her because people knew about her in New York's dealings. Without hesitation, she had snatched up the 007 along with the gold lighter that laid next to it and walked over to his body. She kneeled next to New York and pulled his stained boxers off to expose his limp penis. Keisha had searched high and low, but still couldn't find what she was looking for. A movement from the corner of her eyes caused her to turn her attention to Desiree. Before Keisha could even guess what her friend was about to do, she watched as Desiree had sliced New York's manhood clean off. Her homegirl had stood over New York's body with his shriveled up manhood in her hand. Keisha had managed to keep down her lunch at the sight. She had turned away from the scene right before Desiree placed the blade with the lighter. There was not a lot of blood like Desiree thought there would be when she cut off New York's penis, which made it easier for her to burn off all of his pubic hairs. She thought she was going to be sick again as the hairs crackled in the fire until she had burnt them down to the skin. Once she was done, Desiree had gotten up with New York's dick still in her hand, walked to the bathroom, and flushed it down the toilet. She used the same towel from earlier to wipe off the 007 and put the blade and lighter in her pants pocket. She had also wiped down her back and tucked both it and the towel under her arm to take with her. She then handled the motel room door and opened it, partially conscious of what had just taken place. Keish, come on. Keisha checked all but one place for New York's stash. There was no doubt in her mind that this is where it was, and she was determined not to leave without it, especially now that New York had no use for it. When she dropped to the floor and pulled back the covers, she smiled. Jackpot, she said to herself as she pulled the duffel bag from under the bed. She jumped up, placed the bag on the bed, and unzipped it. Once she saw the money, drugs, and gun, she zipped the bag back up and threw it up on her shoulder. As she was exiting the room, she remembered something. Desiree still waited impatiently at the door, peeking in and out to be sure the hallways were clear. Keisha, what are you doing? She had asked, growing more impatient with her friend, when Keisha stopped at the bathroom door. Hold on for a second, Keisha told her, coming out of the bathroom with the towel in her hand. She began backtracking their every move, wiping down any and everything she thought she and Desiree may have touched. It was times like this Desiree knew why the two of them got along so well. They were just alike. When she was done, Keisha snatched all of the linen from the bed and stuffed it in New York's duffel bag, then picked up the bag and headed back over to the door. Des, did you clean up the bathroom? Keisha asked. Yeah, now let's get the hell out of here, Desiree answered. All right, come on, we out. That was the prologue to Down in the Dirty. If you enjoyed the read, then stay tuned for the next 3 chapters of Down in the Dirty by myself, Essence bestselling author J.M. Benjamin, www.andnewqualitypublishing.com. Follow me on Twitter, JM Benjamin, as well as Facebook, JM Benjamin. Stay tuned.